and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, this is a topic that we have been wanting to simplify for a long, long time and just looking for the right person out there that can do it for us. Because let's be real. You've probably heard the buzzword and trend that's kind of circling around. You've seen all the documentaries about being a minimalist, but you're like, yeah, I can't live outside of a suitcase. Like, how do we make this practical? Aha. Here is my special guest to simplify this. Her name is Miranda Anderson, and she is a maker, adventurer, creative, and the woman behind Live Free Creative Company. She's also the host of the Live Free Creative podcast and author of the newly released memoir, More Than Enough, which she shares the lessons her family learned during a year of not shopping for anything beyond groceries. She shares design ideas and inspiration to live a simple life with less stuff and more adventure, as well as DIY projects to inspire creativity. She currently lives with her husband, 3 kids, dogs, and chickens in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm guessing she lives with a little bit more than a suitcase. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Miranda Anderson. Hey, Miranda.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, Miranda, your book was so much fun to read. And knowing that you have 3 kids, I believe when you wrote the book, it was 3, 5, and 7 years old, right? And you've decided to do this great big challenge as a family where you don't shop for anything new besides groceries, consumables, and replacing old stuff. And I was going like, oh, let's see how this one turns out. What was that like for you guys?
You know, it was really exciting. I think beyond feeling afraid, at the beginning of the challenge, we felt like this is going to be so interesting. We were curious. And we were really excited. There were a few different things that prompted the desire to do the challenge, of course. It wasn't like one day to the next we thought, let's just stop buying anything for the whole, like there are a few things that led us to the decision that we made to try this challenge out. And I think those were sort of red flags in the way that we're completely the way that we believe or the values that we have.
Yeah.
And maybe we should make some course corrections or some adjustments for ourselves and for our family so that we can feel like we're living in alignment with our values. And so it felt actually just really empowering to say, we're going to do this, and it isn't comfortable necessarily, and it isn't really normal. Everyone thought we were a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, especially close family members who have the liberty of like feeling like you might fail, we're very open with the idea that like, it's cool if you only do it for a month and then you realize that you can't live without all these things that you think that you need. But we were really empowered with the idea of like, let's try something different. So
I want to read a bit from your book. Right from the prologue, you said this. I did all the right things. I got married, graduated from college, got a good job, and had a few kids. My husband and I worked hard and saved so we could buy iPhones, build a beautiful home on a big lot, and fill it with all the lovely things our heart desired. We included wood floors, open shelving, and even Pinterest-worthy hanging hammocks that swayed just so when you relaxed into the cords. But you weren't alone in your feelings of inadequacy or impatience for success. It seemed like everywhere I looked, people were struggling with the same problem, the same constant drive to have better in order to feel better. It seemed as if the mutual whole of society agreed to chase more stuff. In fact, it also felt a little bit like a race. Yeah, I can certainly feel that. One thing that you and I have in common is that you used to live in Austin, Texas. I did as well. The land of McMansions and giant homes.
Right.
What do you do with that? That there's sort of this pull of like more, but then also this internal pull of like, ugh, why?
Yeah, exactly. That is kind of the paradox, the feeling of on the surface thinking that I want more, we should have more, we're successful when we have bigger, better, shinier, newer. And then at the same time thinking that, but feeling that's not really true. That's not like my worth and my value and my success isn't tied to those things, even though everywhere that you look, almost everywhere, the messaging will tell you that it is. And so it was a little interesting. When we moved to Austin, we had moved from the DC area where everyone lives. Almost everyone we knew lived in small apartments because it's extremely expensive and you live right downtown, and it was really fun. But so when we moved to Texas, we immediately were, we had lived in the smallest place of anyone, and then we built a house, and we decided to build one of the smallest homes that the builder would build on the lot that we had. And it was more than twice the size of our apartment. So we felt like we were living in a palace, and it was the smallest house in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
First of all, not everyone's experience is the same. And so people, we were living in 2,500 square feet, and most people we knew were living in 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square feet. And then also that really we are all different, and that's good. So the things that we want and the way that we live should look differently. And a lot of times we forget that. We look outside of ourselves to other people for the life that we should be living and the things we should love and the things that we should value. And we forget to check in with ourselves and to ask ourselves what we really want. Did I want to be cleaning 6,000 square feet worth of wood floors, or paying someone to do it? No, because I didn't think we need that much space. And so I think that the experiment and the challenge, the minimalism challenge, also one of the major things that it did for us was allow us to press pause on messaging and really spend the whole year checking in with ourselves. What should our lifestyle look like? What do we value, independent of what anyone else values or what anyone else thinks? And that is really powerful. That becomes, you kind of return to the idea that you get to be in the driver's seat of your life, which is a truth. That's indeed true, but so many of us forget that.
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing, though, Miranda, is that I feel like a lot of the minimalist movement out there right now, at this stage in the game, is all really gorgeous, single dudes who wear the same outfit, and that's it. And
right.
Which works, I guess, if you're a single dude, you could live out of the trunk of your car or a suitcase. But the reality is like, hello, if you've got kids or a partner or pets of any size or shape, it's a little bit harder to do this, isn't it?
Totally. It's so true. In fact, when I was looking for sort of mentors and examples in the minimalism space, this is years ago, 3 years ago, what I found was exactly what you're talking about. Not only good-looking men, but also really wealthy men.
Yeah.
Men who, the reason that they turned to minimalism was because they had climbed the corporate ladder for long enough that they thought, either I continue grinding away at this job making millions of dollars, or I cut my losses, claim back my time, and travel the world with all of the money that I have and can have in the bank. And no ties to family, no real home base, which I love traveling and I love adventure, and I am all about, getting out and seeing the world and even living. I've lived all over the world. But as a mom with a family, having kids, I want a home base.
Yeah.
I relish coming home and having a home and having a space that just feels like safety and comfort and love. And while I feel like, on some level you can take that with you all over the world, there's something really nice about the stability of home. And so that was the question. Can we do this? Can I be a suburban mom with kids and bicycles and scooters and cowboy boots and clothing, closets full of clothes, and a collection of cake plates? I mean, can I be myself and also be a minimalist? Can I love the things that I love and also be a minimalist? And I found that, yes, of course I can. And there's no specific set of rules to what minimalism is supposed to look like. There's some ideas that when we say the word minimalist, it conjures up this idea of the sad person living in a white room with like one chair and their one pair of shoes. But you can be a cozy minimalist. You can be a collecting minimalist. You can be a person living your best life and also be a minimalist. And I think that is what we found. And what happens is that you start to redefine minimalism for yourself and what that looks like for you. And all the same general principles hold true, but the way that they play out in your life is different.
And that's what I loved about the book, is that you guys taking a look at that and going, right, I'm not a digital nomad. I'm not going to live out of a suitcase. The kids got to still go to school every day, and we need to feed and clothe them. And so you came upon this term called practical minimalism. Let's define that. What does that mean to you, and how does this influence how you run your business and also how you run your home?
So I consider practical minimalism to be recognizing for yourself the things that matter most in your life, in your real everyday life, and giving those a place of value, prioritizing them, and then consciously and enthusiastically disregarding the things that do not find a place. So maximalism would be assuming that every single thing should have value in your life, that everything on sale at Nordstrom or in the aisles of Target should possibly be part of your world, or that all of the things that you see your friends doing or the things that other homes have, that should be something that you have. And practical minimalism is thinking, I get to choose, and I understand that my life may not have every single thing in it, and that actually is better for me, and so I'm going to choose the things that I value, and I'm going to disregard the rest. It's in the disregarding the rest, I think, that you find the actual minimalism, because when you do this, you realize that it feels really good and freeing to say no to certain things, to remove things from your life that maybe have held place up till now, but they've run their course, and so then you're able to get rid of them and move on past them. I think we tend to be, and maybe it stems really from like our historic roots of being survivalists, that we tend to collect and hold dear anything that we kind of find. It's almost like we're hoarding in our caves all the things that we may need for the future.
Yeah.
Whether it's achievements, or whether it's like opportunities, or whether it's actual belongings. And I think that I've come to a place of recognizing for myself this wild abundance in the world, both of opportunities and of belongings, and that if I hold lightly the things that exist in my life and then recognize when it's time for them to move on, that opens this space for new opportunities and for new growth and for new development. And that is a really exciting and wonderful place to be.
It's huge. And it takes a shift in your mindset. 100% I believe this, because I think, we're both Americans. A lot of our listeners are American. If you are raised in American culture, you are raised from a very young age that more is better. That if you have more stuff, that means you are more successful. And that also dictates your status in the classroom, in society, in your neighborhood, in all things, right? So you really have to go against what has been rooted into you from a very early age of, is more better? And, is this really a sign of success? And can I find worthiness and value in less? What I think is really interesting about all of this is, again, disregarding the rest, is once you free yourself of all this constant striving for more, you tend to go into a grocery store or a Target and go, no, I don't really need that, do I? Like, do I really? That plastic thing from my back garden that I'm only going to use for about 2 weeks when it's hot enough outside. Like, am I going to really need it? It starts to cultivate that discernment, right?
Absolutely. And that, I think, is one of the most wonderful, long-lasting effects of our challenge. Doing that for a year, recognizing every time I went into the store, I had a list, I knew what I was going for, and I could see all of these beautiful, wonderful things that had been created that I did not need. I absolutely did not need. And that formed this, like you said, I love the word discernment, to be able to go into a store and think through, I love Brene Brown always says, play the movie to the end.
Yeah.
See a thing and play the movie to the end. What is going to actually happen with this little thing that I might buy? I think it's cool and it's cute. So I bring it home, and then what happens with it then? I put it on a shelf. Do I ever pay attention to it again? Does it get played with? Does it get used? Let's fast forward a year. Is it still in my house? Do I need to then clean around it? Do I want to take care of it? Do I want to, and then at what point is this thing going to exit my life? Is it worth the time, energy, maintenance, money, not only now, but as I pay for someone to clean it, or I clean it myself, or I have this, the space that it takes up, you can start to balance, is this really something that is going to add a lasting value to my life? Is there a net positive on this investment or not? And it's incredible when you start to see how many of the things that we invest in are not.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
And you pass it down to your children as well. I mean, I'm in the sandwich generation of caring for aging parents and children at the same time. And sometimes, I have to say, my parents are very good about purging and letting go of things over time. But I've seen some of my friends, when parents pass on, it's like, oh my God, I have this house full of stuff. And it's just stuff. And, that's being passed on to generations afterwards. There's a burden to it. And also an eco side of it. Like, where does it go? The stuff just doesn't magically disappear. It goes into a landfill or gets disposed by a charity shop who ends up throwing it away on your behalf. Yeah, I think that there's a bigger element to that discernment of, am I actually going to buy this, and where does it end up 10, 20, 50 years down the line?
Right.
I also noticed in your book, you have a whole section on gratitude and cultivating gratitude. So what role does that play in all of this?
Well, I have found that gratitude is one of the most transformative emotions that it can be experienced. The instant mindset shift of gratitude changes your perspective from, I need that, to, I already have so much, and how wonderful my life is right now. And in fact, when we cultivate gratitude, we are able to more easily cut through the messaging that says all of the things that we do need in order to feel better. Because guess what? When you feel grateful, you already feel better.
Yeah.
You feel better without having changed anything except for your thoughts. And so cultivating gratitude became really important. I recognized in myself and my kids and my family that one of the pieces of the challenge would be to, instead of always thinking when I see something and I want it, that I should have it, which implies a lack, that by just simply cutting off the ability to buy more from ourselves, self-imposing this guideline, that what we would do would be recognize all of the things that we already have. And we entitled the challenge the More Than Enough Stuff Challenge, because it really wasn't about not shopping as much as it was about, we already have so much. We have more than we could ever need, and we are not recognizing it. We're not living as if we do, because what our life looks like is that we're buying more, which implies we don't have enough. But what we actually have is more than enough, so our actions should follow that we don't buy anything for a while because we've got enough.
Yeah.
So it was definitely not about saving money. It was not about not shopping per se. That I don't think that I had a really big problem with shopping, except for that the way that I shopped implied that my life was not fulfilled, when indeed it was. And so spending the whole year turning around, instead of facing out for what could I use, but turning around to what do I already have. And there were some great examples that I shared in the book of how my kids would say, hey, I need this. And we went rummaging through the things we already had and were able to solve these problems. So I think I was especially maybe suited for this challenge, even though I was a normal suburban mom, living in the outskirts of Austin in this house we had built. I am a maker. And my job for years has been to create things. First, I was a custom seamstress for years, and then I started a blog, and I was a sewing blogger and a DIY blogger. And so really my job was to create things and teach people how to create things. Yeah. And so when I thought, do I have everything I need to live out the year? It was yes, I have enough fabric to sew clothes for an army. I mentioned in the book, my neighbor, who is one of my best friends, she was totally skeptical and thought we were bonkers. And she said, well, what if you need a new lamp? Like, what if one of your lamps breaks and you need a new lamp? She was just being coy. And I thought through it, and then I told her, I have everything I need to build a lamp. Like I have the cords, I have the light bulb thing. I had just changed from some sconces in my bedroom from like corded to hardwired. And so I had a box full of lamp supplies. Like what? How could I possibly think that I needed anything? I mean, I had everything that I needed. And so, but I had found, like you said, that through, I mean, both busyness, having 3 kids is a lot, and working on top of that and running a household, convenience is running to Target and getting a pair of scissors when you can't find one.
Yeah.
Convenience is, I have all of the stuff to sew new clothes, but I also don't have the time, and so I'm just going to go buy a bunch of stuff. So I think one thing that was helpful and fun about this was that my heart's desire was to create and to be creative and to make things and to teach my kids how to make things. The More Than Enough Stuff Challenge really encouraged us to slow down enough to get back to making. And so instead of the 30-minute run to Target that included wandering through all the aisles that I didn't need to shop in and, grabbing snacks on the way out. And, that turns into this, what is convenient turns into spending quite a bit more time, money, and energy than I expected to, why don't we stay home and spend that hour making the thing? We got to have 2 benefits. Mm-hmm. One, the benefit of actually making something together, which was the experience, and then also the benefit of recognizing that we had enough and the gratitude and abundance that cultivated.
Right. So people are listening right now. They are inspired. They're like, okay, well, what if we gave it a go even just for a weekend?
I think that it is a great idea for someone to experiment for a week or a month. In fact, in July, a friend of mine and I hosted a month-long challenge on Instagram. We called it the July Freeze. And there were all these people who decided, I can do a month. I won't do a year, but I can do a month. And what you find when you do even a week or a month is that you get all the same benefits of perspective change and of eye-opening and of gratitude and abundance that you would if you did it for longer. So here are some guidelines. We chose to only buy things that were consumable, which meant that they could be used up all the way. Groceries, gas, printer paper. If a light bulb goes out, you replace the light bulb. And then we chose to not buy anything else. So some of the ways that we accomplished this were by always having a list when I went to the store and only going to the store when I needed one of those consumable items. As a culture, we use shopping and browsing as a pastime, a non-purposeful pastime. And so I cut that out and only went to the store when I needed something that was on a list that was a consumable item. What that did was take away all of the opportunity to mindlessly shop because I was not actually in a place where I could shop.
Yeah, well, I mean, how many times have families, and I, again, when I lived in the States, you go to a big box store with the kids because there's air conditioning in the summer.
Totally.
So you're like, stick them in the cart, let's go, let's get an hour,
Exactly, yeah, and so there needed to be some replacement for those types of times, especially, I have a chapter in the book about self-care and retail therapy because I was recognizing I was using it as a mom at the end of a hard day. I want to go wander around the mall and find some things that I like for me to make me feel better. And so recognizing that there are other ways that may have longer lasting benefits than shopping. So going to museums, going on a hike, taking your kids to a movie theater or a museum or a public library instead of to Target to get that air conditioning in the summer.
Yeah.
If you think outside of what you're typically doing, which may be shopping or wandering or browsing, you'll find that there are lots of resources, free resources available to entertain you and to provide the things that you actually need, inspiration and creativity and all of those things. So the other thing that we do a lot now is shop online. And so it was really helpful for me immediately to cull my email list. I used a program that I will suggest it's awesome. It's called unroll.me. If you haven't heard of it, it's great for business owners. It's great for anyone what it does is read through your emails and decide, it doesn't read them. It just, it scans for any emails that look like subscriptions. And so I think the first time I did it, I had like 300 or 400. And these were retailers that emailed me frequently with sales, but also retailers that didn't email me very often. And so I didn't remember that I was on their list. But when they did hit me with here's something new to buy, I might be tempted by it.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that I could sign up again for the emails that I wanted at the end of the challenge, I went through and deleted any email subscriptions that were enticing me to shop from any retailers, because I knew they were going to have amazing sales on beautiful things during the year. I simply was opting out this year. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't need to read about it.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing for my social media accounts. Instagram is where I like to hang out online. That's where a lot of my community has been built, and I really love it. And it has turned into primarily a shopping platform. And so I went through, and people who I followed because I liked their style and I wanted to buy the things they were wearing, I decided to mute or unfollow for the year, and without feeling bad. It was fine. They, at that time, during that year, were not going to give me the value that I needed.
Yep.
And so I made sure that my Instagram following, I was following people who provided inspiration, who were encouraging in the space of having enough. I follow some other minimalist type people. I follow some motivational people. I follow lots of friends and family who I use the app to keep up with them on a personal basis. And all of that felt like exactly where I wanted to be in that space. Of course, I can't do anything about the Instagram ads that pop up naturally in my feed, except for scroll through. And a lot of times I love, and I still do this because although we don't have stringent guidelines anymore, our practical minimalism as a family and a culture in our family has continued. We, in fact, it's probably even gotten more dramatic because we made the decision to downsize by over half when we made a big move to Virginia. We are continually organizing, de-junking, and I think we own 50 to 60% less now, 3 years later, than we did during the challenge.
Wow.
Because it's continued our ability to redefine what we really need and focus on that. But I still now, I have the practice of seeing an ad for something that's really cool and telling myself, that is really cool. It's really beautiful and I like it. And I don't need it. And then allowing myself to scroll. I have to acknowledge for some reason. I think there's power maybe in acknowledging it's beautiful. Yes. It looks amazing. Yes. And I don't need it.
Yeah.
And just telling myself that, because I think that culture might tell us that things that we like and that are beautiful, we should have.
Mm-hmm. Immediately.
And it's not true. It's just simply not true. You can like things and think they're beautiful and think they're wonderful and appreciate them and their existence without needing them to be part of your own life and your own household. And so sometimes it helps me to say, that's really cool. I really like that. And I'm not going to buy it. I don't need it.
Yeah. And what I liked about in the book as well is how you were teaching these lessons to your children as well. I think in the book you mentioned, when you go to those big box stores and they go straight to the toy aisle, they would go and they would find a toy and they go, Mommy, 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 this is my favorite one today. Can I have it in a year from now when the challenge is done? And you say, yes. But the reality is you weren't going and buying 80 bazillion toys at the end of the challenge, right? They just didn't want and or need it because they had grown out of that phase of liking whatever that toy was. So I think that what I thought was particularly fascinating, if I was to do this challenge in my own household, is like how much this challenge is really teaching not only yourself, but your children the power of patience. Tell us more about what you learned there. Were there any surprising lessons in that?
I think that the main lesson was that patience is powerful, because there are things that you can choose to wait for, and that's what we did a lot of during the challenge. There are things that we can wait for because we're choosing, I'm not going to buy this right now, or I don't need this right now.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things in life that you cannot choose, that you have to wait for because the circumstance demands it. For example, an illness or an accident, or in this last year, our house, our new house in Richmond, had a catastrophic flood.
Oh, no.
We lost over 80% of our household, and we had to move out for 7 months. And actually, it's still not quite finished. It happened in November last year, and it's still not quite finished. There's like the last 10% that's like pulling teeth to get done.
Yeah.
But because we had spent an entire year really focused on patience and that it's okay to wait. And not only is it okay, but it's good to wait. Waiting breeds more gratitude, and it allows you to feel okay even when things aren't necessarily okay, because you realize that you get to be in control of your emotions. And I think that practicing that in the little things, like I'm not going to buy this shirt right now, or those Legos that you think are cool, maybe we'll get next year, and then being able to postpone the gratification without postponing the emotion of feeling satisfied and feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like in the things that we cannot choose to wait for, because we have a lot of experience exercising patience in small, voluntary things, the patience feels the same in the big things that we cannot choose. And so overall, we just feel a lot better. We feel a lot more calm, and we feel like even when we're waiting for things that we can't control, it doesn't mean everything's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, because there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot you can't control.
Well, I feel like my life lesson this go around is all about patience. And I really, really appreciate in your book, every chapter has this chart or worksheet to work through that says, okay, now what do you think about this bit? And so page 56 of the book is a waiting chart. So giving yourself a chance to journal this out. So can you instead wait, say, 10 seconds, take a deep breath before you yell at somebody, honk at another driver, eat an unhealthy snack, all of that? Can you wait 1 hour and then take a deep breath before you look at your phone in the morning? Can you wait 1 day, take a deep breath before you make a big decision or make a big purchase that you hadn't planned ahead of time? I love that. And just going through this process and figuring out, again, it's not about how Mary leads her life versus how Miranda's family leads their life, but like thinking, okay, well, how does it apply to how our household runs or how I run my business as well? And incorporating some of these core values into place. Yeah. So let's go back to what you were talking about, retail therapy, right? So what is something healthier in your mind as a self-care practice instead of roaming the halls and sucking up the air conditioning?
Totally. Well, I think it depends on what the person's true loves and desires are. So I think all of us, everyone listening, can probably think of something that you really love or would love to spend more time on that you feel like you don't have enough time.
Yeah.
And for me, I love going to museums and I love going on hikes. And those are two things that with young kids, you don't find yourself doing that often.
Yeah.
But I was often going to Costco or going to Target or wandering the mall to find that one dumb thing that I had gotten in my head that I needed that I really didn't need. And it was a distraction. The reason I was doing the roaming was not because I had a need. It was because I didn't have a physical need. I had an emotional need for distraction and for inspiration. And I thought I could find it there. And so I learned to spend the time to go on a hike or to go to a museum. And what felt like wasting time then became, this is the way that I care for myself by filling my bucket in this way. Because for whatever reason, we can call shopping like accomplishing something. Even if we're mindlessly shopping for something that we don't need, it feels like accomplishment.
Yep.
We're wandering around at a museum or knitting a sweater, or sometimes that doesn't feel like accomplishment. It feels like indulgence. And so just flipping that perspective, that the things that fill me up because I'm a creative person, because I like being in nature, those are things that are actual self-care. And then the things that drain not only my time but my money and my energy and the space in my house, those are things that are not necessarily they're retail therapy, but I think it's a false form of feeling better. It's and I think that it actually over time, those behaviors consistently can lead to feeling worse to being in debt, and rather than having it be a net positive, I like to say, think of things in terms of their overall effect. Retail therapy ends up as a net negative in every way.
Yeah. Well, because as soon as you buy something, it decreases in value. I mean, immediately, right? Regardless of if it's a car, a couch, or, just something that you have in your house that looks nice. But also, I think what you're trying to say here and what I get from this is that you replace stuff with experiences. You're replacing consuming so much with quality time, either with yourself on a solo level, going out for a hike or just getting outside, or quality time with your kids and family and spouse. Absolutely. So
exactly.
Again, if this book is intriguing to you, I highly, highly recommend go get a copy. You can also download the audiobook if you don't like to have physical books in your house, cluttering things up. You can find this book online at Amazon, Kindle, or even Audible. Or if you live outside of the U.S., you can purchase the book through her website, which is livefreecreative.com. And again, I think it's so great because every single section has a worksheet of some sort to do the journaling process of it, of really going, okay, yeah, I get the principle, but how do I apply it into my life in particular and make it work for you? So, Miranda, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you that I like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast. First and foremost, what is one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or maybe even poking holes and challenging your belief system a bit?
Yes, I just finished Atomic Habits by James Clear, and every few pages had to put it down and either take notes in my planner or talk to my husband he had listened to it. And I kept saying, Dave, I have to tell you about this. And he would say, I know, I listened to it. And I'm like, no, let me tell you because I need to just get it out. I have to talk to you about this. I felt like I feel like I'm fairly good at habits and systems. And this book blew my mind. I loved it, and I'm starting to implement some of the lessons that I learned from it into my everyday life. And so I highly recommend that, Atomic Habits. It's
amazing.
Really incredible.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes for people to check that book out. That's a new one. I haven't heard about that one yet, so I'd love to read it as well. So tell us, who is one person in your network, someone that you know that you just feel is up to brilliant things somewhere out in the world? And maybe we can shine a spotlight on them. And who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast as well.
Yeah, so one of my favorite people, and I've actually interviewed her for my podcast, is Shavonda Gardner. She is an interior designer who lives in Sacramento, California. And we have similar stories, which I think is why we relate to each other. But we also are very different backgrounds, very different family situations. And she's an interior designer who also downsized. She lives in just over 1,000 square feet with her wife and her 2 children and a giant Great Dane. Her style is so different from kind of mainstream Pinterest interior design because she loves bold, saturated, really moody design. And for being a minimalist, her rooms are full. They're filled with plants, and they're filled with personality, and they're filled with color and with texture and with just so much coziness. And I feel like her designs are just a breath of fresh air in a sea of everything feeling the same.
Yeah.
And I also love, she's recently, this year, what I'm following along with really closely is her backyard, turning this basic suburban backyard into an incredible oasis of sustainable garden and a gathering space, and she's going to get chickens, which I love because I have chickens, and I'm like, Shavonda, get the chickens. So, but she's an incredible person, and I love following her and watching her designs. I'm endlessly inspired. The other thing that I really love about her is that she's an activist on a lot of levels, and she shares really candid conversations in her Instagram stories. So her Instagram feed is beautiful, and it's all, these designs and the gardens. And then her Instagram stories is where she gets really real and talks about race and talks about culture and talks about disparity, and that perspective is really refreshing and helpful as well. So I think she's great. You'll love her.
Brilliant. Well, we'll put a link for Shavonda in our show notes for this episode as well. If you guys are curious about her, you can click through and find her. And yeah, she definitely sounds like an intriguing person for sure. So in my mind, I believe simplicity and gratitude go hand in hand. I know we talked about it earlier, but what are you grateful for today, like right now?
Well, right now, I am grateful to be home after a long road trip. I am grateful for perspective. I think that maybe is kind of my underlying feeling of gratitude lately, that so many things that I can't control happen in my life, good and bad, and my perspective feels like an anchor of understanding that the universe is working in my favor. And I truly believe that, even through things that are bad, even through unexpected, terrible things that happen that should beat me down, my perspective through the lessons that I've learned these last few years tells me there is something of value in this for you, and it's your job to find it. Mm-hmm. And I think because of my natural love of adventure and of, experimentation, that is satisfying to me. It's okay that things go wrong because I get to find what's right. Mm-hmm. And that perspective has just absolutely changed my life.
It's beautiful. And if you are inspired by what Miranda's talking about today, I highly recommend tuning into her podcast. It's called Live Free Creative Podcast. And it's all about helping to inspire you to live a creative, adventurous, and intentional life. So find that on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. I think it is a great addition to your podcast library in addition to the Simplifiers. So, Miranda, if people want to find you and connect with you, you say you hang out on Instagram and Twitter. What's your handle?
Yes, I'm Live Free Miranda in both of those locations. Live Free, Miranda.
Okay, perfect. We'll put the links in the show notes for that as well. And if you guys want to take the next step and get connected with Miranda and her team, she also has a free 5-day email course called 5 Days to Freedom. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so 5 Days to Freedom emerged as a lot of people after, as I shared about the challenge, said, okay, I want to do something like this. How do I get started? And so I created this 5-day free email course where each day there's a lesson and there's a little bit of homework. I touch on the topic of gratitude, of abundance mindset, of organizing. One of the days you actually are invited to organize a drawer, and I teach you how to do that. And it's just a very quick snippet of I like this. I want to do something. How do I start? This is how you start.
Brilliant. So we'll put the links in the show notes, again, for you guys to connect through and take part in that if you choose. And remember, you guys, in this whole process, if doing a whole year just seems way too scary, it's not about striving for perfection or it to be looking exactly how Miranda does it. You may pluck just one little bit out of her free email course or her book that goes, you know what? That thing feels right for our family or how I run my business. And that could be pivotal to changing everything else. So Miranda, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I love the book. I'm going to go ahead and buy another book and give it to a friend because I think that this is the kind of stuff that really truly helps people live a simpler and more rich life out there. So I encourage you to keep going, and I can't wait to see what next book you're going to write after this. So,
thank you so much. That means so much.
Yeah. And my final question for you is this. Someone somewhere is listening to this episode right now, and she's like, okay, I'm willing to give it a go. I got a house full of stuff. I've got more than enough to possibly create anything, like a female MacGyver over here. Surely I can do it, even if it was just for a weekend. What is one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
That's a good question. I think my message is that you already have everything that you need in order to do the things that you want to do. So the resources are there. The world is abundant. Your life, if you take a second and stop thinking of what you need and what you want, but recognize what you have, then you'll find so much richness and so much empowerment. I often like to think about how 5 years ago, I wanted the things that are now my reality. 10 years ago, I imagined myself living this life, and here I am today doing it. Our focus tends to be so far forward that we don't pause and acknowledge where we are, and that where we are is somewhere that we wanted to be, and now we're here. So I'd probably encourage that woman to take a moment and celebrate where she is right now. That right now, in this moment, she has everything that she needs for today.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to start.
Yeah, you have everything you need, and you are more than enough. Miranda, thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.